So I got an email question about how to find positive and negative coterminals for angles like pi over 4 or pi over 6. So first let's start with just pi over 4. And assuming we've already graphed it, we'll have to have subdivided pi into fourths, and then 1 pi over 4, I should say, would be right there. So one of those 4 pi over 4 slices. So to find a positive coterminal angle, there are a couple ways to do it. One way would be to continue subdividing the bottom part. And you'll notice that now I've divided not only pi into fourths, but I've divided the entire circle into 8 different slices. So it takes me 8 of these pi over 4s to go all the way around. So if I count, if I want to get a coterminal of pi over 4, I could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then one more 9 to reach back to this side that I needed to for pi over 4. So the answer for a positive coterminal for 9 pi over 4 would be 9 pi over 4 for pi over 4. For a negative coterminal, you could just go the other way. If I started counting, I'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So negative 7 pi over 4 would be the coterminal for pi over 4. So that's the positive coterminal, that's the negative coterminal. Another way to get that answer would have been to start at pi over 4, and if you add to that 8 pi over 4, because there's 8 slices of pi over 4 all the way around, that would give us 9 pi over 4 as well. And some of you have already caught on to this pretty well. 8 pi over 4 is just the same thing as 2 pi if you reduced it. So every time that you want to find a coterminal angle, all you're really doing is either adding a 2 pi or subtracting a 2 pi, which I'll just do as an example here. If you want all the coterminals, you would do pi over 4 plus 2 pi k, meaning any number of k will give us another extra rotation, which will give us another coterminal. So the same thing would happen for pi over 6 if we were going to do that one. So I'll graph pi over 6 over here. So I'm going to have to subdivide pi into 6 equal spots. So here is 1 pi over 6. To find a coterminal to this 1 pi over 6, a positive one, we'd also probably want to subdivide the bottom into equal slices, 6 of them, and then we can count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then one more gives us 13 pi over 6. So that would be the positive coterminal, and if we count it the other way, we'll find out that it takes negative 11 pi over 6. Okay, so hopefully that helps with positive and negative coterminals for pi over 4 and pi over 6. The other question I got was about graphing and finding coterminals for 8 pi and 4 pi. So for 8 pi, just to make the graph, what you should always remember is that if you go from here to there, halfway around the circle, that's 1 pi. So that would be 2 pi, 3 pi, 4 pi, 5 pi, 6 pi, 7 pi, and then 8 pi. So because every 2 pi is an entire rotation, we should expect there to be 4 of these spirals, 4 of these sections of the spiral to go all the way around 8 pi times. So that was 8 pi radians. Now, if you want to answer questions about positive and negative coterminal, we don't actually have to do a lot of crazy math here. You'll notice that after all these rotations, after 2 pi, we're in the same spot as we would be for 8 pi, and the same for 4 pi and for 6 pi. So if you want a positive coterminal for 8 pi, you could just list off 2 pi or 4 pi or 6 pi. If you want a negative, you would just have to go the reverse way. So like negative 2 pi would be coterminal to 8 pi. If you want to do it a little bit more formally, you could start at 8 pi, and if you add a single 2 pi to it, that'll give you 10 pi, and that would be coterminal to 8 pi, because it's 2 pi away. And if you subtract 2 pi, so do 8 pi minus 2 pi, you'll get 6 pi, which is another coterminal angle, which is also positive. So just remember, just because you're subtracting, it doesn't necessarily mean you get a negative coterminal. The only time you get a negative coterminal is if you subtract enough. So if I take off another 2 pi, I'm down to 4 pi, take off another 2 pi. Now I'm down to 2 pi. So I'm rotating around the circle here multiple times. And finally, I eventually get down to negative 2 pi. So all of these angles are coterminal to 8 pi. These angles in here would be positive angles that are coterminal to 8 pi, and this one here would be an example of a negative coterminal. All right, hopefully this video helps a little bit.